Okay, boys and girls, we have been talking about habitats and animals and plants that live there in recent days, correct?
Yes.
And we've been talking about the basic needs that plants and animals have. Can someone raise your hand and tell me what every plant needs? What is one thing plants need, Avery?
Air.
Air,
Sunlight.
sunlight,
Water.
water, and
Soil.
what do they get from the soil?
Nutrients.
Nutrients, very good. Today we're going to talk about an animal. What do all animals need? Abby?
Water.
Water. Kika?
Air.
Air. Ashley?
Food.
Food. And Joshua? Oh, it's the hardest one. You want a fun friend?
Shelter.
Shelter. So you might have noticed over the past few days that we have a new class pet. 2 new class pets. Who are our class pets? You can say it.
Flip and flap.
Flip and Flap. We've been a little disappointed in their activity in recent days, though, haven't we? But tell me about the habitat of these 2 fish. Arden.
Water.
They live in the water. Lila?
Their shelter is a fishbowl.
Their shelter is a fishbowl, but today I'm going to ask you to use your imagination. And I want you to think, well, hold on just a second. I want you to think about the Georgia habitats and think, where might you find 2 fish like this? Not in a bowl, of course, but in other water. What are you thinking, Abby?
The ocean.
In the ocean. That's a common place to see a fish. Where else? Sarah Jewel?
Lake.
In the lake. Avery?
Swamp flush marsh.
In the swamp flesh marsh. Well, our fish, I'm going to tell you some things about their habitat. They live in a river, but nearby their river are some buildings and some streets and that kind of thing. So what habitat do you think these 2 fish live in? What do you think, Miranda?
Probably
Do you want to phone a friend?
Avery. The ocean.
Well, now I'm thinking about streets and buildings. Do you want to help, Arden?
They maybe live in polluted water.
They might, but what habitat do you think this is, Ethan?
The river.
How about the Piedmont, where we live? Does that sound like does that sound like where you live? There might be some rivers or lakes, but there's buildings and streets. That's where that's where Flip and Flap live. And today, I'm going to tell you the story of Flip and Flap's not so excellent adventure. It was not so excellent. So right now, they're getting all their needs met. Do you agree? Well, something happened. They were swimming in this river, and all of a sudden, this giant storm came. And the rain washed all the dirt from the banks of the river into the river. And so Flip and Flap had a little bit of a problem. So some dirt came from the banks into the river. So how do you think Flip and Flap are doing now? What do you think, Nicholas?
Not so very good.
What's the problem?
They can't see when they're swimming.
Yes, they can't see where they're swimming. They can't see to lay their eggs or to hide their eggs, right? There are a lot of problems with that. Do you think they're having a hard time?
Yeah, they can't really see and see if there's like a big fish in the water, and they don't know what's happening because all the dirt is in there because of the river.
So they may have a hard
Yeah.
time protecting themselves
Yeah.
if they can't see. I agree. Well, that is not the only thing that happened to Flip and Flap. Also, there was a factory nearby that was making something, and they tried to obey the law and keep all of their chemicals in the factory, but somehow some got released out into the river. And so some chemicals went into Flip and Flap's river and got into their clear water. So Flip and Flap were not very happy about that. It got kind of messy in there and hard to breathe. What do you think, Lila?
Well, I'm asking, what is,
Oh, I'll tell you about all the ingredients later. But right now, it's chemicals from a factory. The next thing that happened is there were some kids playing on the river, and they had gone to McDonald's and they had eaten a hamburger, and they finished it and they wadded up the paper and they threw it into the river. And so that and their cups and all the other napkins, and so Flip and Flap, there was some litter that went into the river. All right. So tell me about Flip and Flap now. How are they feeling? Caroline.
They're probably like trying to make they're trying to probably just like go on top of the water or something.
Oh.
Just to get like even though they can't breathe, it's probably the like neatest thing that they have because they probably can't breathe very well underwater.
I bet they're having trouble breathing under the water, and that's one of their basic needs, right? Can they survive if they can't breathe? Okay, what are you thinking, Sarah Jewel?
They're kind of feeling sad because people aren't treating them like respected.
If fish have emotions, then they might be feeling sad, right? Okay, so the next thing that happened was it was very cold. It was winter time, and the roads froze. Does anybody know what they do to get the ice off of roads? What do they do, Abiel?
They get trucks that have those little pusher thingies, and they push.
So they might
the snow
scrape the ice off, and sometimes they put something on it to melt it. Do you know what that might be, Caroline?
Salt.
Some salt. So they did that, and then it rained again, and guess what? The rain washed all that salt down into the river. Now I want you to think about a time when you were in the ocean and you accidentally swallowed water. How did that make you feel? What did you feel, Joe? What did it make you feel like?
Icky. And
Okay, and it makes me thirsty because I can't get any fresh water. So that, I think Flip and Flap, one of their basic needs is water, and now they don't have fresh water anymore, do they? So they're having trouble with air and water. Okay, so the next thing that happened was that this car had an oil leak. Have you ever seen an oil leak? Like maybe you saw where a car was and then they pulled away and there's a puddle of oil there? That's what happened. So it leaked all of this oil, and then it rained again, and the rain washed the oil where? Into the river. So here's our oil.
that's syrup.
Mm-hmm.
Syrup oil.
Oh, goodness.
Cool.
You think so? So now we have oil in the river. And the next thing that happened, was that when the people mowed their lawns, they were trying to take care of their yards and make them look beautiful. But after they mowed the lawn, they didn't bag up their grass clippings. Have you ever seen someone putting all the clippings in a bag?
Yeah.
Well, some people don't do that, and they just kind of go out into the street, and guess what it did? It rained. And when the rain came, it washed the grass clippings into the river. Oh my goodness, how are Flip and Flap doing now? What do you think, Jack?
They're swimming in really bad polluted water.
Yeah.
So they can't really breathe, they can't see, and they can't swim very well.
Yeah, they can't see, they can't breathe.
They can't swim.
Well, that is even not the end of our story. The last thing that happened was, did you know that when you use water in your house, that every time you flush the toilet or you turn the sink on or you do laundry, that water goes into your sewer pipes? Have you ever heard of that? Well, and the water goes from the sewer pipes to this plant that cleans out all the pollution from it. And just like that factory earlier in the story, they tried very hard to keep all the pollutants in the plant. And they just let a tiny, tiny bit go into the river. It wasn't very much. It was just a tiny, just like a drop or two. So they were thinking that wouldn't really affect it too much.
Whoa, this food coming.
But look, even just that tiny bit of pollution, wow, look at that. It changed the whole habitat, didn't it? Just that tiny bit of pollution. Poor Flip and Flap.
I can barely see them.
So how do Flip and Flap feel now compared to how they felt at the beginning of our story, Nicholas?
They feel a lot worse. They're like about to die. He's trying to get air.
Yes, he's trying to get air, look. I'm so glad he's performing for us. So what I want us to do, I want us to look, oh look, do these kind of words look familiar? What do we call these? Arden?
Transition.
Our transition words. I want us to try to retell the story that I just told. Does anybody remember the first thing that happened, Caroline?
First, Flip and Flap were swimming, and then all of a sudden, it rained and dirt piled into the
Yes,
water.
from the banks of the river. So those are called eroding river banks. Okay, does anybody remember what happened then? Miranda?
Then all the dirt
It did.
And it just
Do you remember the next pollution that occurred?
There's a building by,
Yes.
and so there was like a factory, and they were trying to do the like follow the rules, but they put some I think accidentally.
Yes.
They accidentally put some in the river.
Some chemicals in the river, right?
Chemicals.
What also happened in this story? Abby F?
Also, some kids were playing by the street, like the river, and they had just gone to McDonald's.
You don't have to give all the details, but what was the main thing that happened?
They had cups and plates, and they balled up their paper and they threw it in.
And another name for that is?
Polluting.
With?
Litter.
Litter. Very good. What happened next, Stephen?
Then it rained,
Yeah, it rained a lot in our story.
and then I think like some salt
You are so right.
from the streets got in the water.
Yes, it did. Salt from the streets got in the water.
Also, did you know the salt can actually blind the water and make it extremely black?
Really? I did not know
It has,
that.
and I tried it one time. But you just have to mix it with, let's say, a white, gray, or brown material.
And it would turn it black?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Okay, what happened after that? Joe, do you remember?
Yes. This guy was mowing the lawn,
That did happen.
and he left little clips of the grass,
And they
and
got
he didn't
in.
put it in the bag, so it rained, and so all the glass clipping went in the water.
That's exactly right. Avery, do you remember something that happened before that?
There was a little plant that I thought it was.
That's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. The sequence is okay.
And it made and some of the stuff got in there, and it turned out to be a lot.
It did. Just a couple of things it became powerful, didn't it? Do you remember the one thing we haven't talked about yet, Andrea?
When the oil, there was some oil that a car did, and then there was some rain, and the rain made all the oil go into it.
It did. So what I want you to do in just a minute, I'm going to let you turn and talk to the person seated next to you. And what I want you to talk about, some of these things that happened in nature, like eroding riverbanks. We can't really do anything about that. But I want you to turn and talk to your neighbor and tell them, is there anything that people can do to prevent these things from happening that you could do?
You should start
Okay, who has a good idea they want to share with the group? Nicholas?
to quit putting pollution in roads and litter.
A litter. That's an easy one to take care of, isn't it? So instead of littering into the roads or the rivers, where should you put your litter?
Find a trash can and stick it.
Very good. Who else had an idea? Sarah Jewel?
With grass clipping, they can just put it in a bag and then fold it the top so that it doesn't go down.
Does anybody have another solution to the grass clipping problem that you may do at your house? I'm not sure. Some of you might be doing this at your house. Instead of putting the grass clippings in bags, is there another place you could put them? Do you know, Nicholas?
Well, you can hook one of those little lawnmower bags on the back.
That's an easy way to bag it up. But do any of you have a compost at your house? So that might be a place that you could put some of those grass clippings. Who else had an idea? Joe? Factory chemicals?
You put something around the factory so that nothing can get out of it.
Oh, so some kind of barrier between the factory and the river. Okay, Miranda, did you come up with something?
It's the factory.
Uh-huh.
On the factory, they could have, like, if it go out through this little thing and it'll turn into this big, this big tunnel thing, but it's just round like a circle.
So you're thinking.
And then, when it fills up, when it fills up, they'll put it in like the garbage can or.
So have a special place to make sure that the pollutants go in a certain place instead of into the river. I like that. Does anybody have any ideas for the oil leak, the car that was leaking oil? Okay, Abby?
Maybe you could not like drive by the river.
Okay, I have an even better solution to that problem. How about you just fix the leak? That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? Yeah, get it tuned up. Exactly. And then the last one I think that you can actually have a lot of control over is the sewage problem. Think about the way, something that you could do at your house that would help with this problem. Jack?
Well, actually, I have a connection.
Okay.
This truck went around through our neighborhood and put these huge stamps on the sewers. It says, "No polluting in sewer leads to river."
Oh, I like that. So warning people, making sure they understand. Well, I had an idea that maybe you could try to conserve water in your homes. How can you think of one way that you can conserve water, Andrea?
Being really careful for it, like when you turn on the water, be sure that you're ready for it on the bath.
Mm-hmm.
You should get in and then turn it on.
I like that. So we're going to talk a lot more about pollution over the next few days, but y'all did an excellent job, and I'm glad you enjoyed Flip and Flap's not so excellent adventure.
How are you going to